Guys, today we are going to talk about graphing equations, and we are going to start with what we would normally do on paper as a graphing packet. Now, if you go back to the Canvas page where you got to this assignment, there is the paper copy if you prefer and you want to. You are welcome to print it out, but I'm going to show you how to do it online. If you do choose to do it on paper, just snap a picture of the page and then you can insert it into the appropriate slides as we go. But let's begin. Let's talk about graphing equations. So we're going to go over to the slide presentation that you were given, and let's look at the first slide together, okay? So here we go. We are going to graph this equation, y equals x. Now, y equals x is the most basic equation that we can have. So what you're going to do is, what this means is whatever x is, y equals the same thing. So you're going to click on each box and you're going to put in, if x equals -3, what would y equal? If x equals -2, what would y equal? And so on. We're going to go through this together. And you can, if you want to split your screen and do your work on one side while you're watching this video, that would be fine too. So here we go. You're going to type in, if x is -3 and x and y are equal, then y is -3. If x is -2, y is -2. If x is -1, y is -1. If x is 0, y is 0. If x is 1, y is 1. If x is 2, y is 2. And if x is 3, y is 3. So that's the most basic form of an equation. Let's see what that equation makes. Okay, so now I'm going to really plot these points. My first coordinate is -3, my second coordinate is -3. So I'm going to grab one of these points here, and I'm going to graph -3, -3. And I'm going to drop the point. I'm going to do the same thing with -2, -2, -1, -1. I've got 0, 0 already plotted for me. 1, 1, 2, 2, and 3, 3. So I have plotted these points. And you will notice these points make a straight line. Now it's going to be a little trickier to get the points exactly where they need to go, but that is why, that's why I have for you this line at the bottom. And you can take this line up and we can adjust the line to form, the graph that we made. So you're just going to take it and we can form this line that passes through all of our points. Okay? Now, these dots are going to be adjustable. So you might want to use them for several different lines as needed. If you don't like them, you can go ahead and just delete them. But look at what y equals x makes. It makes a straight line. So now we're going to change this line, which I refer to as the mother line, and we are going to add 1 and 2 to x. So on the next slide, you are going to make a prediction. Predict what you think the graph of the equation will look like when we add 1 to it. So pause the video and go to your slides and type in your prediction here. Okay, let's test this prediction. Let's go back and let's look at what we've got. Okay, so we already know what y equals x looks like. We've got that. We can regraph it here. But what we don't know is what y equals x plus 1 and y equals x plus 2 looks like. Okay, so we're going to do that now. We're going to look at what these look like. So if I were to plug in -3 for x, what is -3 plus 1? It's -2. When I plug in -2, what do I get? -2 plus 1 is -1. When I plug in -1 to this equation up here for x, -1 plus 1 is 0. What if I plugged in 0 for x? 0 plus 1 is 1. If I plugged in 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. So now I'm finding all of these y values that I would get for plugging x into my equation at the top of this column. 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So now I've got a whole new set of points to plot. So let's see. What do we have? When I plugged in -3, I got -2. When I plugged in -2, I got -1. When I plugged in -1, I got 0. When I plugged in 0, I got +1. When I plugged in 1, I got +2. When I plugged in 2, I got +3. And then when I plugged in 3, you can just grab any one of these, I got +4. Okay? And so since those numbers came up in green, I'm going to use the green line to indicate where those, which points correlate to this graph. And here we go. I'm going to graph my line now. Oops. That's pretty close. Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Oops. That really isn't that great. Let's pull this down a little bit. All right. There we go. So what happened to my line? It shifted, didn't it? It shifted up one space. Okay. Is that what you predicted? You don't need to go back and change your predictions. It's okay. But now we're going to pause. I want you to try y equals x plus 2. Try graphing that and see how you do. All right, let's give it a shot. When I plug in -3, -3 plus 2 is -1. -2 plus 2 is 0. -1 plus 2 is 1. 0 plus 2 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 2 is 4. And 3 plus 2 is 5. So now I'm going to move my dots again, and I'm going to replot these. When I plugged in -3, I got -1. When I plugged in 2, I got 0. When I plugged in 1, I got, or not, sorry, when I plugged in -1, I got 1. When I plugged in 0, I got 2. When I plugged in 1, I got 3. When I plugged in 2, I got 4. And when I plugged in 3, I got 5. Okay, so now I took my line here, and I'm going to pull it up, and I am going to connect. Now notice, my line goes through the entire graph. When we're graphing lines, our line is going to go through the entire graph. Okay, so I have completed this. Once I have made a prediction, graphed my lines, I can now go to the next slide where I'm going to write a rule. What's going to happen when I add a number to x? Well, there are three things that we talk about with a line. And the first is the slope. And slope talks about the steepness of a line. Did the steepness change when I added a number to x? No, it didn't. So I'm going to put no change in the steepness of the line. Next, I need to talk about the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. So let's go back and look. What happened to the y-intercept when I changed this equation by adding? Well, when I added 1 to x, what was my y-intercept? It was +1. When I added 2 to the x, what was my y-intercept? It was +2. So I'm going to look at those and say, oh, When I add a number to x, the y-intercept increases by the number I added. Okay? And now let's talk about correlation. Correlation or trend is the direction that a line goes. If a line starts low on the graph and rises as I go left to right, we would say it's a positive trend. But if my line started high on my graph and seemed to drop going left to right, we would say that's a negative trend. So in this case, the correlation, the only change I make is to add a number to x, it doesn't change the correlation of the original mother line, y equals x. And we're always talking about slope, y-intercept, and correlation in relation to the most basic line, y equals x. So what is the correlation of a line when I add a number to x and do nothing else? It's going to be positive, okay? So now it's your turn. Let's make a prediction. If you were to graph y equals x plus 50, what might that look like? So I want you to go ahead in your pause and go flip over to your slide presentation, and I want you to type in the slope, y-intercept, and correlation that you think you would get from y equals x plus 50. Okay, let's see how you did. So if you are interested in checking your prediction after you type it in, you can go to this site here, and we're going to explore this right now. You don't need to worry about 2, 3, 4. We're not there yet, but why? When we had y equals x plus 50, well, what is the coefficient of x? We know if there's nothing in front of it, the coefficient is 1, okay? And what did we add to x? We added 50. Now you're going to want to change these values on your graph to 100, or else your graph isn't going to fit. We want to make it a little bit bigger, and then we can plot it. And if we look, we can see, oh, look what happened. It crossed the y-axis at 50, but everything else seems to be going in the slope hasn't changed from the mother line. So I'm going to go back, and if you wanted to help you out, you could do this. You could go back to check your line, but I'm going to go back now and I'm going to look and see what happened to the slope. There was no change. What happened to my y-intercept? It increased to a positive 50, and the correlation didn't change either. It was still positive, okay? Now it's going to be your turn. You're going to try and first make a prediction. What happens when I subtract a number from x? And then you are going to graph the lines and then complete the summary. And when you're all done with that, you're going to submit. So go ahead and do that now. And don't forget to hit submit when you're all done. You can go back and watch any part of this video or email or ask for help. But there is no WSQ. You are just going to fill in these last 3 slides. And have a good day.